So here we're dealing with positive and negative numbers, and we're multiplying. In the first expression, we have 7 times negative 2. These parentheses are just there to highlight the fact that this is a negative number. They don't want us to confuse the negative sign and multiplication. It just wants to realize the operation is multiplication, and we're multiplying a negative by a positive. I think the best way to think of this is in terms of groups. You could think of this question as saying 7 groups of negative 2. And that's going to end up equaling negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2 7 times. Just as you would do with positive numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when we add each of these from prior experience, we know that we're going to get a negative number. And we can think of this as having negative 4, negative 8, negative 12, negative 14. So our answer here for 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. And you notice that's just like 7 times 2, only negative. In the next problem, we encounter what is often most confusing with negative multiplication. But the idea is that we can have negative 9 groups of negative 4. Let's just explore for a moment. What is 9 times negative 4? That's negative 36, for the same reasons above. Think of this as 9 groups of negative 4, and that gives us negative 36. But here, we don't have 9 times negative 4. We have negative 9 times negative 4. So one way to reason through this is to say that these two numbers are opposites. Right? So in the first case, if 9 times negative 4 gave us negative 36, negative 9, the opposite of 9, times negative 4 can't give us the same thing. It's the opposite number of 9. So it has to give us the opposite answer. Instead of negative 36, it gives us positive 36. One way to reason through negative multiplication, to compare it, how it compares to the positive example above. And the next one, we have 3.5 times 7. I guess one way I think about this is to split up 3.5 into 3 plus 0.5, or I'll write as in half. Right? That's 3.5. This times 7. Now when I multiply 7 by this number, I can think of it as multiplying 7 by the whole 3. So 3 groups of 7, that's 21. And then 7 groups of a half. So 7 1/2 and 7 3s. So it's 21 and 7 times a half. Well, what's that? Every 2 halves gives us a whole. So 6 times 1/2, right? 6 groups of halves gives us 3 wholes. And then there's still an extra 1/2, right? Think of 7 as 6 and 1. So that times a half gives us 3.5. Because, again, 7 1/2, every 2 1/2 gives us a whole. Do this 6 times, you get 3 halves, 3 wholes, 6 halves, and then 1 more half left over. That's 7 1/2. Add this up, and we get 24 1/2 as an answer, or 24.5. Now, this one kind of prefaces this. The problem before does preface us to deal with the mixed number. So now negative 2 1/2, you can think of that as negative 2 plus negative 1/2. Be careful there. That's not a positive 1/2, right? That's a negative 1/2. That times 1. Well, fortunately, right, anything times 1 is itself. So we can leave this as negative 2 1/2. But let's just play with this. What if this was 2? How would we deal with this? Well, 2 times negative 2 gives us negative 4. 2 times negative 1/2, that's a negative as well. So we're adding a negative what? Well, you have 2 negative 1/2 gives us 1 negative whole. And altogether, that's negative 5. So that would be our answer if this was a 2, but it's a 1, so this doesn't change the negative 2 1/2. That's called the identity property, which we go over in other videos. Alright, hope this helped.